Nurse!
He's not breathing.
His heart is stopped.
Someone call 911.
Does anyone see an AED?
Nurse saved a veteran in subway train. 24 hours later, full military battalion surrounded her home, and the screeching of the subway brakes pierced the morning rush hour. Alina Hart looked up from her phone just as the elderly man across from her clutched his chest and collapsed. No one moved. "I'm a nurse," she called out, pushing through frozen commuters. She couldn't have known the man in the simple gray coat was retired General Franklin Briggs, or that by tomorrow her life would change forever. The Blue Line subway rattled beneath downtown Chicago, packed with Monday morning commuters. Steam rose from coffee cups, headphones, sealed passengers in private worlds, and the familiar sway of the train lulled everyone into the comfortable anonymity of urban life. Alina Hart stood near the doors, her scrubs partially hidden under her coat, her hospital ID badge dangling from her neck. 22 years old and 3 months into her first nursing job at Mercy Hospital, she was still adjusting to the grueling overnight shifts that left her commuting home while most people headed to work. Alina's path to nursing hadn't been straightforward. The daughter of Vietnamese immigrants who ran a small grocery store in the city's west side, she had grown up translating medical instructions for elderly neighbors and helping them navigate prescription labels. When her father suffered a stroke 5 years ago, the compassionate care from the hospital nurses had solidified her calling. She'd worked evenings and weekends throughout nursing school, graduating with honors, despite the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. What her colleagues admired most about Alina wasn't just her technical skill, but her ability to truly see people, to notice the trembling hands of an anxious patient, or recognize when family members needed reassurance they were too proud to ask for. In a healthcare system that increasingly valued efficiency over connection, Alina stubbornly insisted on knowing her patients' stories, their fears, and their small victories. This human-centered approach had already earned her the respect of veteran nurses, though Alina herself remained oblivious to her exceptional qualities. She simply did what felt necessary, what her parents had taught her through example. You help because you cannot, because you seek recognition. This unassuming nature made her both beloved by patients and overlooked in a society that rewarded self-promotion and spectacle over quiet competence. When the elderly man collapsed, Alina's training overrode her exhaustion. She dropped her bag and pushed forward as other passengers backed away, creating a small circle of space around the fallen figure. Kneeling beside him, she quickly assessed unresponsive, no pulse, not breathing. Cardiac arrest. "Call 911, she shouted to the stunned crowd. "And does anyone know if there's an AED on this train?" As she positioned the man for CPR, she noted his military-style haircut and the edge of what looked like a metal ribbon peeking from his inner coat pocket. But there was no time to wonder about his identity. The next 4 minutes would determine whether he lived or died, and Alina was the only one prepared to make the difference. Alina began chest compressions, counting rhythmically under her breath. The train had stopped at a station, and passengers streamed out, some pausing to watch through the windows, others hurrying away to avoid involvement. The conductor's voice crackled over the intercom. "Medical emergency in car 5. Paramedics have been called. Please exit the train." A young man in a business suit knelt across from her. "I know basic CPR. Can I help?" Alina nodded, grateful. take over compressions when I signal. We'll switch every 2 minutes to stay effective." As they established their rhythm, an older woman approached with a small red case. "I'm a retired doctor. The station agent gave me the AED." The three worked in coordinated silence. Alina managing the airway, the businessman performing compressions, the retired doctor applying the automated external defibrillator pads to the man's chest. The machine analyzed, then delivered its verdict. Shock advised, stand clear. They backed away. The shock delivered Alina immediately resumed CPR. After another cycle, she felt it a pulse, weak but present. "He's back," she said, relief washing over her. "Keep the airway clear. Where are those paramedics?" As if summoned by her question, emergency responders pushed through the gathering crowd. Alina delivered a concise report. Male, approximately 70 years old, cardiac arrest, down for about 7 minutes. One shock-delivered pulse returned about a minute ago, still unconscious, but breathing. The lead paramedic nodded appreciatively at her professional assessment. "We've got him now. You did good work." As they transferred the man to a stretcher, a small leather wallet fell from his coat. It opened as it hit the floor, revealing a military ID. The paramedic glanced at it, and his expression changed instantly. "That's General Franklin Briggs," he said, his voice hushed with recognition. Alina didn't recognize the name, but the paramedic's reaction made it clear this was someone significant. She gathered her things, suddenly aware of the blood on her hands and clothes from where the man's head had struck the floor during his fall. "Do you need my information for the report?" she asked. The paramedic nodded, taking down her details. As the emergency responders whisked the general away, Alina stood alone on the now empty train, the adrenaline fading, leaving her shaking slightly. She had just saved a life, something she'd been trained to do, but had never performed outside the controlled environment of a hospital. She decided to continue home rather than follow to the hospital. Her shift had been exhausting, and she'd done all she could. Someone else would take over now. That's how the system worked, each person playing their part in the chain of survival. What Alina couldn't have known was that this seemingly routine emergency response had been captured on multiple cell phones, and the identity of the man she saved would transform her simple act of professional duty into something that would capture the nation's attention. By the time Alina woke that afternoon, the story had already begun spreading. General Franklin Briggs wasn't just any military officer. He was a decorated 4-star general who had commanded troops during 3 conflicts, served as military advisor to 2 presidents, and was widely respected across political divides for his integrity and strategic brilliance. His collapse on public transit, rather than in a secured military vehicle, had been a fluke. He'd been on his way to speak at a veterans event and had decided to take the subway after his driver called in sick. Alina's phone buzzed with notifications, messages from colleagues who had seen the news, from nursing school friends sharing links to articles, and several from unknown numbers. She ignored them all, assuming they were mistaken. Surely the media wasn't interested in a nurse doing her job. She prepared for her shift as usual, making a simple dinner and packing lunch for the night ahead. The persistent knocking at her apartment door was an unwelcome interruption. When she opened it, she found a smartly dressed woman with a press badge. "Alina Hart, I'm Sophia Chen from the Tribune. I'd love to get your statement about saving General Briggs." Alina blinked in surprise. "I'm sorry, but I'm heading to work. I just did what any healthcare worker would do." But not everyone would have recognized cardiac arrest so quickly or known exactly what to do. Sophia persisted. The general's family is trying to find you to express their gratitude. His son said the doctors confirmed that without your immediate intervention, his father wouldn't have survived. Alina hesitated, uncomfortable with the attention, but moved by the thought of the family's gratitude. I appreciate that, but really, I was just in the right place at the right time with the right training. Would you at least consider an interview when you have time? This story is inspiring a lot of people. Alina reluctantly took the reporter's card, not committing, but not refusing outright. As she headed to work, she wondered how to handle this unexpected attention while maintaining her focus on her patients. She decided to speak with her nurse manager for advice. Surely this would all die down in a day or two when some news story captured public interest. Alina's shift that night was surreal. Colleagues she barely knew congratulated her. Patients asked if she was that subway nurse from the news. Her nurse manager called her into the office midway through the shift. The hospitals received dozens of media requests for interviews with you, she explained, and the Briggs family has been trying to reach you through official channels. Alina's discomfort must have shown on her face because her manager smiled sympathetically. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. The hospital's PR team can handle the media, but I thought you should know that what you did is bringing positive attention to nurses everywhere at a time when healthcare workers really need it. This perspective gave Alina pause. She hadn't considered how her actions might reflect on her profession or inspire others. What would you do? She asked her manager. I'd set boundaries, maybe one interview with a reporter. You trust a brief statement expressing gratitude for the recognition, but emphasizing the teamwork involved. And I'd definitely meet with the Briggs family if they're reaching out. That closure can be meaningful for both sides. Alina nodded, considering this measured approach. I'll think about it, but my patients come first. Of course they do, her manager agreed. That's why you're exactly the kind of nurse we need representing our profession. As Alina returned to her rounds, she felt a growing resolution. She would acknowledge this attention, thoughtfully use it to highlight the importance of CPR training and emergency response, then return to her normal life. The story would fade from public interest soon enough. What she couldn't have anticipated was what awaited her the next morning as she left the hospital exhausted after her 12-hour shift. The sight that greeted her would prove that this story was far from over. It was, in fact, just beginning. As Alina pushed through the hospital staff exit at 7:30 a.m., she stopped short. The small parking lot was filled with people in military uniforms, at least 30 service members standing in formation. At their center stood a distinguished woman in full dress uniform adorned with numerous medals and insignia indicating high rank. Before Alina could process this unusual sight, the woman stepped forward. Nurse Hart, I'm Lieutenant General Victoria Reeves, Deputy Surgeon General of the Army. On behalf of the United States military, I'm here to personally thank you for saving General Briggs' life. Alina stood frozen, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. This isn't necessary, ma'am. On the contrary, General Reeves replied. Franklin Briggs isn't just a respected military leader. He's a mentor to countless service members, myself included. Your quick action preserved a national treasure. The formation of soldiers stood at attention as General Reeves presented Alina with an official letter of commendation. Photographers, both military and civilian, captured the moment. General Briggs is recovering well and has asked to meet you if you're willing," Reeves continued. His family is also eager to express their gratitude. Alina, overwhelmed but touched by the gesture, nodded. "Of course I'll meet him. I'm just glad I was there to help." As the ceremony concluded, General Reeves added something unexpected. "The Secretary of Defense has approved a special civilian commendation for your actions. We'd like to present it formally at a ceremony next week, if you're amenable." This was escalating beyond anything Alina had imagined. A simple emergency response was transforming into something that felt disproportionate to her actions. Yet, the genuine gratitude in General Reeves's eyes made it difficult to decline. "I'd be honored," she said finally, "though I still believe many others would have done the same." As the military contingent departed, Alina realized her quiet life had irrevocably changed. The question now was how to navigate this new reality while staying true to herself and her values. By that evening, Alina's story had gone national. Her phone became unusable as calls and messages poured in from media outlets, old classmates, distant relatives, and even corporate sponsors seeking endorsement opportunities. Her parents' small grocery store was suddenly filled with customers who came less for groceries and more for a chance to connect with the family of the Subway hero. Alina's father, who had rarely shown emotion since his stroke, beamed with pride as he showed customers his daughter's picture on the front page of the Tribune. Her mother, more practical, worried about the attention and how it might disrupt Alina's career and peace of mind. The hospital administration offered Alina a week of paid leave to manage the situation, which she reluctantly accepted. Her apartment building's management had to hire security after finding journalists camped in the lobby. Through it all, Alina struggled to reconcile the public narrative, "Heroic nurse saves American hero," with her own understanding of what had happened. She had performed CPR, something she'd been trained to do, something thousands of healthcare workers did every day without recognition. When the governor called to invite her to the state capitol for a special recognition ceremony, Alina finally sought help managing the overwhelming attention. Her nursing school mentor connected her with a public relations professional who specialized in helping private citizens navigate sudden public attention. "You don't have to accept every invitation or respond to every request," the PR advisor explained. "But this attention gives you a platform, a chance to advocate for causes you believe in. Think about what message you want to send while the spotlight is on you." This framing helped Alina see beyond her discomfort. Perhaps she could use this unexpected platform to promote CPR training, support for nurses, or recognition of healthcare workers' daily contributions. With this perspective, the attention began to feel less like an invasion and more like an opportunity, albeit one she hadn't sought and still found somewhat uncomfortable. The meeting with General Briggs was scheduled for Thursday morning at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Alina arrived early, nervous but composed in her professional attire rather than her scrubs. A military aide escorted her through security and up to a private room on the cardiac floor. General Briggs was sitting up in bed, his imposing presence somehow undiminished by the hospital gown and monitoring equipment. At 72, his face showed the weathering of decades of service, but his eyes were sharp and alert. When Alina entered, he immediately attempted to stand. "Sir, please don't get up," she said, rushing forward. "Young lady, when someone saves your life, you stand to greet them if you're able," he replied, though he did settle back onto the edge of the bed. Nurse Hart, I understand I owe you my continued existence. I just happened to be there, sir. Anyone with training would have done the same. The general studied her face. Perhaps. But it wasn't anyone, it was you. And from what I've learned about you since, that doesn't surprise me in the least. They talked for nearly an hour. The general asked thoughtful questions about her nursing career, her family's immigration story, and her experiences in healthcare. He listened intently to her concerns about the attention she'd received. Sudden recognition can be as disorienting as sudden tragedy, he observed. Both require adjustment to a new reality. As their meeting concluded, he handed her an envelope. My personal letter of thanks, and something else I hope you'll accept. Inside was a handwritten note expressing profound gratitude. Accompanying it was a challenge coin, a military tradition normally reserved for service members who had performed exceptional acts. This isn't standard procedure, the general admitted with a small smile. But then neither is having your life saved by a remarkable young nurse on a subway. As Alina left the hospital, the weight of the coin in her pocket felt significant, not for its material value, but for the connection it represented. For the first time since the incident, she felt a sense of peace about her role in this unfolding story. The Pentagon ceremony was scheduled for the following Tuesday. In the days leading up to it, Alina worked with her PR advisor to prepare for what would be the most high-profile moment of her unexpected journey. They crafted a brief speech that expressed gratitude while redirecting attention to the importance of emergency response training for civilians. Remember, you don't need to be apologetic about being recognized, her advisor emphasized. Your discomfort with the spotlight is understandable, but the recognition itself is deserved. Alina's parents would attend the ceremony, her father's first major outing since his stroke. Her mother had purchased a new ao dai traditional Vietnamese formal wear for the occasion, a sign of how significantly this event registered in their family story. The hospital had arranged for several of Alina's colleagues to cover her shifts, and her nursing school planned to live stream the ceremony for their current students. What had begun as a private act of professional duty had expanded to touch multiple communities. The night before the ceremony, Alina received an unexpected call from the retired doctor who had brought the AED on the subway. Dr. Eleanor Winters had seen the news coverage and reached out through the hospital. "I wanted to make sure you know you're not alone in this," Dr. Winters told her. "I'll be at the ceremony tomorrow. Sometimes the spotlight finds us when we least expect it, but that doesn't mean we don't deserve to stand in it." This connection with someone who had shared the experience provided Alina with a grounding presence as she prepared to face the most challenging public moment yet. Tuesday morning arrived with unexpected complications. Alina's father woke with concerning symptoms, dizziness, confusion, and slurred speech that suggested a possible TIA or mini-stroke. Her mother called in a panic, and Alina rushed to their home, instructing them to call an ambulance immediately. At the emergency room, Alina shifted seamlessly from honored guest to advocate, explaining her father's medical history to the attending physician and ensuring he received prompt attention. The initial assessment was reassuring. Likely not another major stroke, but definitely symptoms that required monitoring. As the morning advanced, Alina faced an impossible choice: stay with her father during this medical uncertainty or attend the Pentagon ceremony where hundreds of people, including high-ranking officials, were gathering to honor her. The ceremony couldn't easily be rescheduled given the number of dignitaries involved. Her father, now more stable and aware of the situation, grasped her hand. "Con Ji," he said in Vietnamese. "Go. This honor is important." "Nothing is more important than you." "Bah," she replied, torn between duties. Her mother, practical as always, offered a solution. "I will stay with your father. Your cousin Min can drive me if anything changes. You go represent our family." Alina's PR advisor, upon hearing of the situation, arranged for a military liaison to provide transportation that would get her to the Pentagon on time if she left within the hour. The hospital staff promised to contact her immediately if her father's condition changed. With reluctance and anxiety competing with her sense of obligation, Alina changed into her formal clothes in the hospital bathroom. As she prepared to leave, her father called her to his bedside. "I came to this country with nothing," he said in Vietnamese, his speech slightly slurred, but his meaning clear. "Today, my daughter is honored at the Pentagon. This is why we came. This is the American dream." His pride gave her strength, but as she headed to the waiting car, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the narrative unfolding around her. Was she betraying her own values by leaving her father's side for public recognition? The Pentagon's ceremonial spaces were imposing by design high ceilings, flags of all military branches, and the weight of history in every polished surface. Alina was escorted through security and into a preparation room where her PR advisor waited with last-minute guidance. "There's been a change to the program," the advisor explained. "They're presenting you with the Medal of Distinguished Civilian Valor. It's rarely awarded. Only 17 people have received it in the last decade." Alina's unease deepened. "That seems excessive for performing CPR." "The narrative has evolved beyond the medical intervention itself," her advisor explained carefully. "You've become a symbol of civilian-military cooperation, of ordinary citizens supporting our service members. The story resonates deeply right now." Before Alina could process this information, a military aide appeared to escort her to the stage. The auditorium was filled with uniforms and formal attire cameras positioned strategically throughout. In the front row sat General Briggs in a wheelchair, his family beside him. Dr. Winters offered an encouraging nod from her seat nearby. The Secretary of Defense spoke about service sacrifice and the bridge between military and civilian life. General Briggs's son described the family's gratitude. A video played showing interviews with subway passengers who had witnessed Alina's actions, their accounts embellished with dramatic music and emotional narration. As Alina listened, the disconnect between her lived experience and this curated narrative grew. The simple medical intervention she had performed was being transformed into something mythic, a metaphor for national values rather than a healthcare worker doing her job. When she was called forward to receive the medal, Alina approached the podium with a decision forming in her mind. The prepared speech in her pocket no longer felt authentic. The weight of her father's medical situation combined with this exaggerated celebration demanded honesty. The Secretary of Defense placed the medal around her neck with ceremonial gravity. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the room. Alina stepped to the microphone, took a deep breath, and departed from her prepared remarks. "Thank you for this honor," she began, "but I need to speak truthfully about what happened on that subway train. I'm a nurse, Alina continued, her voice gaining strength. "What I did for General Briggs is what healthcare workers do every day. Without recognition, we see people in crisis and we respond. The true hero in this story isn't me. It's the training that prepared me, the healthcare system that educated me, and the countless medical professionals who perform similar acts without ceremonies or medals." The audience grew still, sensing the deviation from expected gratitude. "My father is in the hospital right now," she revealed, emotion finally breaking through her composure. "He suffered a stroke 5 years ago that changed our family forever." The nurses who cared for him then, who showed compassion not just to him, but to our entire family, they deserve medals more than I do. She touched the medal at her neck. "I accept this with humility and with a request that we recognize heroism exists in everyday acts of service, that we value healthcare workers not just when they save generals, but when they comfort the dying, when they hold the hands of the frightened, when they work double shifts during crises." General Briggs, from his wheelchair, began to applaud. His family joined, then Dr. Winters. Then gradually, the entire audience rose in standing ovation. "If my actions merit recognition," Alina concluded, "then let this moment shine light on all those who serve without recognition in hospitals, in homes, in communities across our nation. They are the true heroes of our society." As she stepped back from the podium, Alina felt a weight lift. She had honored her profession, her family's journey, and her own values. Whatever came next, she had spoken her truth. The aftermath of Alina's speech transformed the narrative once again. Media coverage shifted from "heroic nurse saves general" to discussions about healthcare worker recognition, emergency response training, and the value society places on different forms of service. Alina returned to the hospital immediately after the ceremony to find her father stable and improving. The attending physician confirmed it had been a TIA, a warning sign, but not a major stroke. As she sat beside his bed, still wearing her formal clothes with the medal around her neck, her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Her PR advisor called with updates the speech had gone viral. Healthcare organizations were reaching out for partnerships, and speaking invitations were pouring in. More significantly, several foundations wanted to discuss potential funding for programs that would provide CPR training in underserved communities. "Your honesty created an opening for meaningful change," the advisor explained. "People respond to authenticity, especially when it challenges comfortable narratives." General Briggs had requested a meeting the following day. His aide explained that rather than being offended by Alina's redirection of attention, the general wanted to discuss how his foundation could support her vision for broader emergency response training. As evening fell, Alina's mother brought Vietnamese food to the hospital room, and the family shared a quiet meal. Her father pointed to the medal with pride, but then squeezed her hand and said in Vietnamese, "Your words brought more honor than the medal." For the first time since the subway incident, Alina felt aligned with her circumstances, not swept along by external forces, but charting a course that reflected her values. Morning brought news that Alina's father would be discharged with adjusted medications and a follow-up appointment. As she helped him prepare to leave the hospital, doubt crept in about her next steps. Had she overstepped by speaking so candidly at the Pentagon? Would the military leaders who had honored her now regret their decision? Was she equipped to handle the platform She now had to speak meaningfully about healthcare issues when she was still so early in her career. Her father, observing her pensive expression, spoke up. "You are thinking too much again," he said, his English careful and deliberate. "When I came to America, I doubted every day. Could I provide? Could I belong? But doubt doesn't help. Action helps." He pointed to the newspaper on his bedside table, which featured a photo of Alina at the podium. "You saved a life with your hands. Now you can save more with your voice." His simple faith in her purpose steadied Alina. The path ahead wasn't clear, but her commitment to walking it with integrity was unwavering. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Alina received a text from General Briggs's aide. The general was en route to meet her, bringing several military medical officers and representatives from his foundation. Whatever doubts remained, the time for action had arrived. The hospital's administrative conference room had been hastily arranged for the meeting. Alina arrived to find not just General Briggs and his aides, but an assemblage of military medical leadership hospital administrators and 2 representatives from the governor's office. "Nurse Hart," General Briggs greeted her, extending his hand from his wheelchair. "Your speech yesterday was exactly what this country needed to hear." Before Alina could respond, the hospital's chief of medicine stepped forward. "We've been discussing a joint initiative between military medical services and civilian hospitals. Your actions have created a unique opportunity for collaboration." The scope of what was being proposed quickly became clear: a national program for emergency response training starting in Chicago, but with potential for nationwide expansion. The military would provide resources and training expertise, hospitals would implement community outreach, state governments would offer certification and recognition, and they wanted Alina to be the public face of the initiative. The pressure was immense. She was 3 months into her nursing career, still mastering basic clinical skills, and they were asking her to step into a national leadership role. The voices around the table grew increasingly enthusiastic, planning launch events, media strategies, and funding structures. Alina felt simultaneously honored and overwhelmed. This was far beyond anything she had imagined when she knelt beside an unconscious man on a subway train just days ago. "I appreciate the confidence you're placing in me," Alina finally said when there was a break in the planning discussion. "But I need to be honest about my limitations. I'm a new nurse, still learning my profession. I don't have public speaking experience or program development expertise." General Briggs nodded thoughtfully. "No one is asking you to abandon your nursing career or to become something you're not. We're asking you to share your authentic voice, the same voice we heard yesterday at the Pentagon." The hospital's director of nursing, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Alina, we could structure this to complement your clinical development. Reduced clinical hours, but with mentorship to ensure your skills continue advancing. The initiative would benefit from your ground-level perspective." Still, Alina hesitated. "My concern is that my involvement might overshadow the actual work. This shouldn't be about me. It should be about expanding access to life-saving skills." "That's precisely why you're the right person," General Briggs responded. "You've consistently redirected attention from yourself to the broader mission. That integrity is what this initiative needs." The challenges were significant: balancing clinical practice with public engagement ensuring the program reached underserved communities rather than just generating positive publicity, and maintaining her own authentic voice amid the machinery of a major public initiative. As the discussion continued, Alina noticed her father standing in the doorway of the conference room. He had been waiting in the lobby for her to drive him home, but had come to find her when the meeting ran long. He stood quietly watching the proceedings with evident pride. Seeing him, the man who had left everything familiar to build a new life in America, who had worked 16-hour days at the grocery store to support his family, who had fought back from a devastating stroke through sheer determination, clarified something for Alina. "I'll participate," she announced, interrupting a discussion about funding allocations. "But I have conditions." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. First, this initiative must prioritize communities with limited health care access neighborhoods like the one where my parents' store is located, where many residents are immigrants or uninsured. General Briggs nodded approvingly. Second, the program must include multilingual materials and cultural competency training. Emergency response looks different in different communities. The hospital administrators exchanged glances, recognizing the validity of this perspective. Third, I want to continue working as a bedside nurse, even if with reduced hours. I can't speak authentically about healthcare if I'm not practicing it. And finally, she said, drawing strength from her father's presence, this can't be about creating a hero narrative. It needs to be about empowering ordinary people to help each other in crisis situations. The room was silent for a moment, then General Briggs spoke. "Those aren't just conditions, Nurse Hart. Those are the foundation of what will make this initiative successful." 6 weeks later, Alina stood on a stage at Chicago's Millennium Park for the official launch of the National Emergency Response Training Initiative. Behind her stood a diverse group of partners, military, medical personnel, hospital representatives, community organizers, and government officials. In the front row sat her parents, General Briggs and his family, and Dr. Winters. This program began with a single moment on a subway train. Alina told the assembled crowd and media, but its true power lies in the moments that haven't happened yet, the future emergencies, where someone will know what to do because of the training we're providing today. The first phase would establish training centers in 20 Chicago neighborhoods with priority given to areas with limited health care access. Military medical personnel would train community members to become instructors themselves, creating a sustainable model that could expand nationally. As Alina concluded her remarks and the crowd applauded, she caught her father's eye. He gave her a slight nod, the same gesture of approval he had offered when she had announced her decision to become a nurse years ago. In that moment, Alina understood that her journey had come full circle. What had begun as a private act of professional duty had transformed into a public commitment to service, not through the medal she had received, but through the work that would follow. Within the first 3 months, the initiative trained over 5,000 Chicago residents in basic life support and emergency response. Community centers, places of worship, and schools hosted sessions in multiple languages. Military medical personnel worked alongside civilian healthcare providers, creating bridges between systems that had rarely collaborated before. Alina balanced her clinical shifts with program appearances, finding that her continued nursing practice enriched her public role. Patients occasionally recognized her, But within the hospital, she was valued for her clinical skills rather than her public profile. General Briggs made a full recovery and became an active advocate for the program, leveraging his military connections to secure additional funding and support. His foundation established a scholarship for nursing students from immigrant families named in honor of Alina's parents. The subway businessman who had helped with CPR and the retired doctor who had brought the AED both became program instructors, exemplifying how ordinary citizens with training could make extraordinary differences. Most significantly, the initiative recorded its first documented save just 8 weeks after launch. A teenager who performed CPR on his grandfather after attending a training session at his high school. The grandfather survived, creating a powerful testament to the program's impact. Media coverage shifted from focusing on Alina personally to highlighting the program's outcomes and the stories of those who had been trained. This evolution aligned perfectly with Alina's vision of redirecting attention from herself to the broader mission of community empowerment. The Pentagon ceremony that had once seemed excessive now appeared as merely the catalyst for something genuinely meaningful. The medal Alina had received remained in its case on her parents' mantle, a symbol not of personal heroism, but of unexpected beginnings. 1 year after the subway incident, the National Emergency Response Training Initiative had expanded to 15 cities across the country. Over 100,000 civilians had received training, and documented saves numbered in the dozens. The program had evolved to include specialized modules for schools, workplaces, and community organizations. Alina had grown into her role as program ambassador while continuing her clinical development. She had been promoted to charge nurse on her unit, her leadership skills enhanced by her public experiences. Her colleagues no longer saw her as the subway nurse, but as a dedicated professional who happened to have an unusual platform. General Briggs and Alina developed a genuine friendship, their different backgrounds and generations bridged by shared values. He often spoke of how his near-death experience had given him a new mission in his retirement years, supporting initiatives that connected military expertise with civilian needs. The program's success attracted international attention, with delegations from several countries visiting to study the model for potential adaptation. What had begun as a chance encounter on a Chicago subway was transforming emergency response training globally. Perhaps most meaningfully, Alina's parents' grocery store had become an unofficial community hub, hosting monthly training sessions in Vietnamese, Spanish, and English. Her father, fully recovered from his TIA, proudly served as host his own medical journey, informing his advocacy for emergency preparedness. On the second anniversary of the subway incident, Alina was invited to deliver the commencement address at her nursing school. Standing before the graduating class, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had followed a routine commute home from work. "People often ask if saving General Briggs changed my life," she told the graduates. "The truth is, it didn't change who I am. It revealed who I've always been, who my parents raised me to be, who this profession trains us to become. We are all potential responders to the crises around us, whether they make headlines or not." She looked out at the faces of new nurses preparing to enter the profession, diverse, determined, and dedicated to service. "The most heroic act isn't performing CPR on a famous person," she continued. It's showing up every day for patients who will never know your name. It's seeing people at their most vulnerable and offering not just clinical care but human connection. It's recognizing that in a world that often feels divided, we all share the same fundamental needs: to be seen, to be helped, to be treated with dignity. As applause filled the auditorium, Alina thought of the elderly man on the subway train, whose life she had saved not because he was General Franklin Briggs, but because he was a person in need. That simple principle had guided everything that followed. "Your hands are trained for healing," she concluded, "but your greatest tool is your capacity to truly see the person before you. In that moment of recognition of shared humanity lies the true heart of nursing, of service, and perhaps of heroism itself." The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for Alina, but for the values she represented: the quiet competence, unwavering compassion, and genuine humility that defined not just her journey, but the highest aspirations of healthcare professionals everywhere. As she left the stage, Alina knew that while the spotlight that had found her might eventually dim, the ripples of that subway moment would continue expanding through lives saved by those she had helped train, through healthcare workers inspired to advocate for their profession, and through her own continued journey of service, one patient at a time. The full military battalion that had surrounded her home that day a year ago had long since departed, but something more enduring remained: a recognition that heroism exists not in grand gestures or public accolades, but in the willingness to see another's need and respond with whatever capacity one has to help. That was the lesson Alina had learned on a subway train, and it was the legacy she would continue to build, not through medals or ceremonies, but through daily acts of service that together formed the true measure of a life well lived.